All right, welcome everyone to our NAEP member meeting for the month of February. We'll be doing these meetings every month this spring. We'll talk more about that later, but I want to welcome all of you. I'm Mimi Lufkin, CEO Emerita at the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity. And this month's NAEP member meeting is on centering equity in the comprehensive local needs assessment. We know that this is an item that is hot on your radar right now while you're getting your comprehensive local, I'll just use CLNA. I apologize for the acronym, but as you're getting your CLNAs prepared and the processes for submitting data and information to the states, and those of you from state education agencies, making sure all of your resources and supports are in place to ensure that your local educational agencies have great success in conducting their CLNAs so that the applications you receive are as relevant as possible to closing those equity gaps that we're really focusing on in career and technical education. As folks are sprinkling in, I'd like to encourage you all to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already done so. And I do have one prompting question that I'm going to ask folks to respond to kind of as a starter for today's session. And one of the things I want you to know is that today's session is really, it's all about you. It's not about John and Sarah and I, and I'll introduce my colleagues here in a minute. We want to hear from you. We want you to ask lots of questions. We want you to engage in conversation with your colleagues. We're going to share some things with you. We've got resources to share and all kinds of stuff for you to take away. And of course, the session is also being recorded. And that recording will be made available to other members, other NAEP members, so that they'll have this information as well. So in your, as you're starting to think about this work, I'd love to hear from all of you about what's exciting you about the comprehensive local needs assessment. And you're in some of your states, or most of the states, I think we've seen one cycle of CLNAs being completed. Equity is continues to be a big topic of issue and concern inside the CLNA, and we're going to be talking about strategies in Wisconsin and Delaware for really focusing on the issue of equity in the comprehensive local needs assessment. And we want to know what's exciting you about the CLNA. I'm excited about the CLNA because, to be really honest, it is the driving force around ensuring that we focus on students that are being left behind in career and technical education, students who are being left out, students who are have barriers to access and success. And the comprehensive local needs assessment really drives everyone's attention to looking at those gaps and identifying effective strategies to engage students in career and tech ed, which is such an important aspect of their life trajectory towards a career that has meaning to them. I do want to remind all of you that NAEP is here. You're all members, so NAEP is here to serve you. We sit on 4 pillars of work, professional development being the largest of them all. Today's activity is one of those. We provide technical assistance as well, public policy and advocacy, and we do research and evaluation work as in addition to all of that. And all of our programs are available in the PD side of things in virtual and in-person settings. We have lots of in-hand resources and also online courses and other things available through our learning management system. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. I'm going to mention this quickly. I'll close with this again, but I wanted to highlight a few dates for you that are upcoming. We'll be doing these series of member meetings this spring and into early summer. So mark these dates down. I'll pop this slide up again at the end of the session today, but we'll be releasing a new root causes and strategies document, a big literature review looking at what are the root causes that create barriers for student access to STEM and CTE. We have an affinity group meeting on March 18th. a national board meeting on May 18th, and we'll be doing another member meeting on June 16th focused on corporate partnerships. All this information is available on the member services page on our website. The link's at the bottom down there. Go check it out and register today so that you got these popped up on your calendar. All right, let's get on to it. I'm really pleased that I have a couple of colleagues with me today who are willing to share where they are, that both their challenges and their successes in regards to the implementation of their work around the comprehensive local needs assessment. Let me just introduce the two of them quickly, and then they're going to share some things with you and facilitate some breakout activities so we can be engaged in conversation. First of all, Jonathan Wickert from the Delaware Department of Education. Jonathan is the Education Associate Post-Secondary Program Administrator in CTE, and has been a partner with NAEP in a variety of ways, shapes, and forms over the years. And most recently, we're working with Delaware to assist them in ensuring that equity is centered in the development of their post-secondary comprehensive local needs assessment. So John will talk a little bit about that. And Sarah Barrett. Sarah is from Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, the Assistant Director of CTE. And again, Sarah, over the years, has been a great partner as the Wisconsin Department of Ed, I think, was probably a founding member of this organization. Yes. And most recently, we've been conducting a series of technical assistance meetings with all of the regions across Wisconsin, and brought in some experts to facilitate those conversations to help provide resources and learning with those groups. So Sarah's going to talk about that and other things going on in Wisconsin. Lots of good resources. Whoop. I want to point out one thing to you, and I'm going to stick this link in the chat in just a minute. We have a Google Drive that we've put lots and lots of resources in there for you. So Sarah and John, if you want to reference any of those items that are in the Google Drive, please feel free, and I'll stick this link in the chat as soon as I have a minute to grab it and put it in there. It'll only take me a second. But I'm going to pass the baton now and go ahead and ask John if he will kick it off. And let's see, I'm going to stop sharing and let you take over, John, okay?
All right, thank you, Mimi. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. So much so that I actually drug myself into the office and I put on a tie. So that if that gives you an indication of how excited I am, like I hope it resonates. So what I'm going to speak to you about today, as Mimi said, is really about our post-secondary career technical education space. We refer to all of the work happening there as the Delaware Connects strategy. So as I talk about this, right, like that's kind of the frame it fits in. And I would be remarkably remiss if I did not recognize Lisa Torbert, who's in the audience there today, as my co-conspirator in this, right? She was instrumental in it. I'm just talking about it. But since she abandoned me by retiring, she still deserves credit for her work here. So in terms of the CLNA, our perspective when we kind of first looked at this was that it represents what I call a compliance trap. This is an easy trap to fall in, right? Like, oh, I've just got to have this thing and do these things and check the box, right? And I'm off. Right, that's like a really dangerous place. And so one of the first things when our team started looking at this and investigating our strategy, we identified that's not where we want to end up, right? So we use that, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a couple of minutes, but we use that as kind of the basis for a significant amount of decision-making along the way, right? Don't fall into the compliance trap. And we recognize kind of early on this idea that how we approach the CLNA is really a reflection of what we embody, right? And value as both individuals and institutions. So in terms of like your takeaway today, that is the thing I want you to take away, right? Your approach embodies what you and your institutions stand for. That is the thing. As we move through, I'd like you to reflect on this question, right? How well does your CLNA, or the approach you're going to take, embody system values and equity, right? Like that's the lens I'd like you to kind of look through, because that's the lens that we approached our work through. Not saying we got it all right, right? But that's the approach. So some context for you. Delaware files a combined Perkins WIO estate plan, right? Like a handful of other states. But we, in the most recent authorization, made 3 fundamental changes, which gave us the ability to have greater influence over the broader post-secondary landscape and to make some structural shifts. And we did this with our partners. So the first one was we expanded beyond Pell programs, right? So we expanded our influence across, quite legitimately, the entire post-secondary system in terms of our statewide language, even though we have no purview over significant portions of that system, even to the point where we don't even fund programs in significant areas of that system, right? But we knew we wanted to influence it, so we kind of just grabbed pieces of it in terms of program eligibility. The second one was we created an alternative post-secondary funding formula, and I'll talk about this more, but in essence, what it does is it provides a minimum base allocation to each of our funded institutions, and then the rest of their funding is going to be based on a formula that's driven by our data system, and it's essentially dependent upon the number of economically disadvantaged concentrators that participate in those Perkins eligible programs, right? So we're incentivizing. You have security in your base funding. It's predictable every single year, but we give you clear line of sight on, as you shift, right, student outcomes and enrollment and such, how your funding will adjust with that kind of ancillary amount. The feds were not in love with that, but right, we're doing it. They let us get away with it. And then the last one was we created a post-secondary reserve fund in Perkins to fuel system innovation, right? So as we stand things up, it's literally to give funds to institutions to be innovative and not afraid to fail, right? So that is clearly kind of an experimental space and a capacity building space for our institutional partners. So I kind of explained Delaware Connects is this broader strategy. This strategy comes through what we call the post-secondary CTE cadre. And so you'll see here, it's our funded institutions. I provided a copy of this and an executive summary of the whole strategy in the resources folder, as well as the state plan for you to dig into should you like. But essentially we looked across the policy landscape and said, who are the folks that we need at the table to help us develop this policy, but that also have influence, networks, and the ability to make decisions, right? And so we pulled them into a group that collaborates on every single decision in this space. The ones I really want to flag for you all that I think might be helpful are the Delaware Department of Labor, right? So like apprenticeship is in here. We have prison education in here. We have the adult education divisions of our vocational technical school districts. So in Delaware, they exist on the K-12 and the post-secondary side. And we also have Delaware Technical Community College, which is a statewide community college system. And then finally, we have the director of our higher education office, which gives us access into the 4-year space where we wouldn't have had it before. This group, and I can't emphasize how instrumental this was, this group sent delegates to the Equity Leadership Academy for the states, right? So like Lisa was there, I was there, and some members of this team were there. And that really set the springboard in for a lot of what I'm going to speak about next. So essentially, we came out of that engagement and we said, look, let's get set on what our values are, right? And what we believe as a system across all of us. And so the first thing that came out of that was this belief statement. Like, what do we believe about post-secondary education, right? And the big things here, right? They align to our Perkins plan. They align to the values of all of us, but you'll see in here some really kind of key words, right? We're talking about access, enrollment, opportunities, right? So the learner lens. We move beyond family sustaining wage, which I'll talk about in a minute, right? To wealth generation. We're looking at careers that provide recession resistance. And the last piece, which is the thing I think we're most proud of, is that idea of the learner thrives in the community in which they choose to live, right? They're a member of it, they see themselves in it, and they see their importance in that space. That jumped us into kind of, well, what is the vision for this broader system, right? And it's literally that what we all do is we work together to connect learners, secondary and post-secondary institutions, social support networks, and good jobs. Like, we're a connector. That's our primary role, right? We don't have to own all of these things, but our job is to connect all of these parts of the system, right, to accomplish that thing that we believe. right? And so we said, great, so like, what does this mean? What does this look like? Like, what is the system characteristics? So our principles as a group, our decision-making process kind of works through these. One, everything we do is equitable, right? We're addressing systemic barriers. But what's key here for us is equity is at the center of the system, right? Every decision has to come back to discussions around equity, and there have to be routines about it. Second is we're adaptable. We don't want to be in that funk of we do what we've always done before, right? It's okay to make mistakes, right? And as the economy changes, we'll change. So we don't look at anything as being permanent, right? Everything is only as good as long as it's working for the period of time it's working and that it's needed, right? And so the only constant in our world is change, and we've embraced that idea. And then finally, this idea of permeability, right? So credit for prior learning is the big one here. But also just, again, what is the lens the learner sees and navigates the system through? And how can we make sure that we reposition the system around the learner and not the institution or the employer as our quote unquote customer, right? They're beneficiaries of what we do. They're not necessarily the customer in our mind. And I'm going to move through this quick because I want to leave like plenty of time for Q&A, but there's a couple of things I want to dive into. So in terms of implementation, right? Like here are the things we intend to tackle. This is in the executive summary in more detail, but right, the systemic barriers and the way we're going to tackle that is learner and community voice, right? Like, how do you know where the barrier is? Someone tells you where the barrier is, right? Like, that's critical. You know, data existing at the center of this, to the point of, and I'll talk about this more, we're developing an entirely new data system, right? With all of these partners, shared governance, the whole 9 yards to make this work. But the last bullet is the one I think I'm especially kind of proud of for the group, which is we have this value around moving beyond accountability and compliance towards aspirational metrics, right? And this is one. We want to get, like I said, beyond that family sustaining wage or that living wage. And so we said, great, like we looked at the data and we said the state's median wage, right, is much higher. It's a much better place for people to start, right? It gives them more opportunities for continued education and removing and addressing other barriers. But that's not where we want to stop, right? So within 3 years, we want everyone that completes one of our programs to be earning at least the state's average wage, right? Like that's the goal. It's not about you finished and we're done. It's you finished and what's next for you, right? And how can we help you accomplish that? And then that helps us view permeability as people enter and exit the system, right? How good of a job have we done helping them move from the median to the average wage in terms of their ability to navigate the system? So, right, like I said, I'm gonna like dive into this a little bit. So you can see here, our goal is putting the CLNA, we see it as a process. We don't see it as a thing, right? It's a process that we engage in, and it's continuous. It's not an every 2-year thing. It's a thing we do constantly, and equity is at the core of that. So what we attempted to do, we knew we were going to design the system and the policy and all of these other things first, and then design the CLNA like next to last. Right? So everything we did, every decision we made along the way, we said to ourselves, what does that look like in terms of the CLNA? What does that look like in terms of alignment to the CLNA? What does that look like in terms of routine? Right? So that as we were developing the rest of the system, we knew when we got to this point, the CLNA was in a position of value for every single stakeholder that was going to use it or receive communication attached to it. To the point of, and you see this on here, we actually, before we built the data system, developed a shared research agenda across stakeholders that would all use the data, right? So we started with the questions we all want to answer, right? We started with these beliefs and some of these aspirational metrics and say, great, we're going to build the data system around that. But first, let's make sure we can research and answer the questions we want to answer using the data system, right? We didn't want to be in a position where we couldn't answer a question of value. And so the data system is something we actually fund the updates through that reserve fund on behalf of the institutions that use it. So we meet with them monthly, and we have project planning and all of these other great things, right? And we're moving through that in a collaborative manner and developing it so it meets their needs and that they don't have costs associated with the updates to that system. We're developing, I'm just bounced around a little bit for you, right? We wrote some administrative policy and procedure, like Lisa, phenomenal in that world. She just crushed it, led our partners through that. So we married things like program quality metrics, right, to our beliefs in terms of an equitable system. Like, does that thing we're talking about lead to a better outcome for the learner? Is it in the learner's best interest, right? And so we just completed a review with Kale, a policy review, and they evaluated our policy for equity and gave us some recommendations for where we need to go next with this. The last two, like very quickly here, right? Funding formulas, I mentioned the front end. We're going to develop some outcomes-based funding on the back end that connect to the data system and some of those broader aspirational metrics, right, under Delaware Connects. But the one other thing I'm really excited about is we're marrying the application and the accountability model. So our partners will use the CLNA in their application like you would expect, but the improvement model on the back end is quite literally continue to participate in the continuous improvement process, experiment, figure out what works and what doesn't, and do it with fidelity, right? So if you're doing the right things and you're attempting it, we consider that you're in compliance. That's simple, right? And then we're going to be working with Mimi to update the local application after the CLNA is created and piloted so that these things align, right? So it's very clear. I take it from A and I put it in B, right? Seamless kind of process for our partners. So kind of wins for us, right? We're having discussions now that we didn't have before with an asset orientation, right? Our partners are working together. And what I think is really cool is they're seeing equity and collaboration, not as a threat, right? But as a measure of success. The better we're working together, the better we're all doing, right? Is now the approach. The better our learners do, the better position we all are. That was not the case. We couldn't even get these people in a room a few years ago, let alone working together. We're starting to see really robust conversations around institutional incorporation of student voice. And the group just formed what we call the Equity Advisory Committee. So they're collecting data from the institutions that basically says, hey, what are the challenges your students are having now? And they're going to populate that advisory committee with partners in the community and that are state agencies that offer programs to address that specific need and literally bring them to the institutions, connect them, right, to all of these partners. So we're using the need to drive membership in that committee, which again, huge, right? But I screwed up. If there's a place I really screwed up, it's right here. When we started all of this, student voice was not on the radar. Completely missed it. It was not until we were in that academy that we were like, oh my God, like, right? So we're course correcting. We're developing strategy. We're going to be very intentional around this, right? We're adding members to our cadre. We're adding student voice at our institutions. And we're working on that, right? And I think that's key here is you don't have to get it right the first time. You just got to get some of it right. You got to be moving in the right direction. You got to learn. We'll get there. So don't be afraid to make a mistake, right? We made this huge mistake. We're going to sort it out. In terms of next steps, right? So we're working with NAEP to develop the CLNA with all of these things in mind. That's coming together very well. We're going to be working with the cadre to develop this shared definition. And the way I like to explain this to people is, this is how we're going to know that we're living up to our commitments. Like, are we adhering to the principal statements, right? And the things we said we believe and we're going to do. That's kind of the key here, right? And then we're going to make this actionable, the alignment piece I mentioned, and we're funding next year for all of our funded institutions to work with NAEP and go through the PIPE process so that they have a partner in this from day one. It gives us cover and it gives them the ability to not be defensive about their data, right? Because there's nobody at the table with the purse strings, right, coaching them through. It's an unbiased third partner that gives them some cover. So I was reflecting, right? Recommendations for you all, as if I didn't talk enough. Be strategic and then go fast. I used to say go slow to go fast. I think I was wrong. I think it's be strategic. It's going to take a little more time, but once you do that, wham, right? Barriers remove themselves. So be strategic and then go as fast as you can go. From the beginning, get clear on your shared values. This is what solves a lot of the problems you're going to run into later. We talk about, I don't know who to work with and I can't get people at the table. Well, you know what? Have you determined what your values are? Right? Like, if you don't know that, you don't know anything. just to be blunt. And I think the most important thing, the thing I want you to take away from this, your approach to this says everything about what you value as people and institutions. I think that's what's at the core. It's only a compliance trap if you let it be. That's it. I'm on time, like I promised.
You're good. You're good, John.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to Sarah and let Sarah share what's happening in Wisconsin. And then just to give you kind of a bit of heads up about the runway here, then we're going to break out into 2 breakout sessions that Sarah and John will facilitate with you all and talk about your own challenges and your own successes with the CLNA. All right, so Sarah, it's yours.
All right, is this, you can hear me? Great.
Yep.
Thank you, John. It's such a pleasure to be in partnership with you and listen to all of the ups and downs and ins and outs that Delaware has gone through. And I just want to first do my shout out to Barb Bitters, who is with us today. And Barb is is someone that is near and dear to us, to me, and was a mentor of mine as I moved into my role here at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. So hi, Barb. The point of difference here between John and I is that I'm representing the secondary side of Perkins. And so just a little bit about the landscape in Wisconsin. Our technical college system is our fiscal agent for Perkins, and a CTE is comprised of both secondary and post-secondary, and that might be the same for all of you. I did link in the slide deck our Perkins state plan, so you can see that and take from it what you will. The thing that I want to mention about our partnership with our post-secondary partnership is that it also dovetails with the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, and that's where our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is housed. So there's this kind of triage of state agencies who manage different parts of how our work gets done. And we work together to coordinate activities, provide the comprehensive high quality career and technical education services. And the one thing that's, I suppose, most exciting is that in Wisconsin, our governor a long time ago, and don't quote me on the history of this, created a Governor's Council on Workforce Investment. And more in the last, I suppose, 4 to 6 years, I won't even say 8, 4 to 6 years, they have been more intentional about writing a strategic plan that focuses on talent development. And why that matters to us in career and technical education is because it's really about how we gain attention of our legislators and other state leaders of career and technical education. And once we have that hook, then we can start talking about equity and how we remove barriers to accessing these high quality programs. So our goals and principles around secondary CTE in Wisconsin are laid out pretty nicely. We highlight 5 quality elements, and you all know them well. They're near and dear to all of you. They're, a sequence of academic and technical courses, dual credit, work-based learning, industry recognized credentials, and of course, we wouldn't be whole without our career and technical student organizations. So we lift those up as well. And through the philanthropic dollars of JP Morgan Chase back in 2016-17, like Delaware, Wisconsin was one of 10 states who received those funds to grow and implement a statewide pathways system. And so we have been able to carry that through. And I bring that up today because it is the vehicle in which we are bringing together both both what matters for students and that youth voice that John talked about, and how we talk to students and their families about high quality career and technical education, and the value of these root cause analyses that we're doing through the CLNA. So it's really, the timing of all of this couldn't have been nicer. And then of course, our team, our career and technical education team, really is honing in on eliminating equity gaps across student, race, and ethnic groups and special populations. And we have some tools internally at the department that allow us to do that. And we've also directed some of our Perkins funds towards professional development and removing barriers to access or lack of persistence of students in career and technical education. So here it is, folks. You know, we're not a huge state, but we have 421 school districts, and of those, 375 participate in the Perkins Grant Program. And for us, our why and our North Star is that CLNA supports equity in action. And the article that I've linked here is something that our communications specialist helped us write, that really focuses on our why and our beliefs around the CLNA. So I encourage you to just take a quick peek at that if you have a moment. We also have taken a page out of Delaware's handbook in terms of utilizing our Perkins Reserve dollars. And when it comes to implementation of high quality career pathways, we looked at the regions of our state, and here's a lovely map of Wisconsin, and it's broken out into one of our many boundaries. And these are by the regional economic development organizations. And I want to give this a little bit of airtime here, because this is how we're leveraging economic development, workforce development, along with our regional education partners and our K-12 and higher ed partners and business and industry. So all of the stakeholders that you all know and are aware of and engage on a regular basis. But we were able to use our Perkins Reserve funds to fuel innovation in career pathways aligned with high skill, in demand, and high wage occupations. And the Perkins CLNA allowed us to do that because we're really honing in on these regional collaboratives, being able to bring together all of these stakeholders to allow us to teach them and educate them about the CLNA, and that the whole idea of a gap analysis. It's not lost on business and industry that doing needs assessments is exactly what they need to do to keep their businesses fresh and thriving. And so the CLNA is sort of the linchpin of all of these changes, so that we can move the needle on reducing barriers to access. So this year we focused on the process of the CLNA, along with professional development, to help our career and technical education coordinators, that's our target audience, better understand why it's important to do this work in collaboration, rather than it being, as John described, that compliance trap. So a big part of this was educating our school districts on the process of root cause analysis and to get to the why of the data gaps. And much like other states, our entire state data system and all of the data we collect for Perkins and other career readiness indicators for state statute purposes all got moved from one system to our data warehouse. And that was a huge sea change for us. And we're still overcoming challenges, as Mimi knows and others of you know, because we have had to reteach all of our career and technical education coordinators, not only where to get the data, but how to access the data, and then be able to work with their school districts on how to move through that process. It also has given us a really awesome opportunity to refresh all of our data definitions. So what do we mean when we talk about a participant, a concentrator? What do we mean when we talk about high quality work-based learning? What does all of that sort of look like? And so we have compendium guidance out on career-based learning experiences. I linked in the Wisconsin resources document a report that we just put out on social emotional learning and workforce readiness. It's like the magic combination of how you get kids excited and involved in their education. And then that in turn helps us have more robust data. So this accurate data collection is really a key. And we have had, just like many other industries, are experiencing the Great Resignation. Our team is no different. So we have a new data consultant on board. We're trying to get kind of back up to speed on everything, but also understanding the data collected and identifying those gaps. And then of course, robust stakeholder discussions. You heard Mimi mention that Wisconsin partnered with NAEP last spring, and then again as a follow-up to put on 5 technical assistance sessions in those regions that you saw on the Wisconsin map earlier. We're trying to pull together regional economic development folks along with all of their education partners to really dive into what are the regional workforce and talent needs and how are those being met in those geographic areas, and then how is it that we can, as education partners, help them understand our needs and vice versa. So those were super successful, those 5 sessions, and we're so excited to be able to work with NAEP again in the future, and we're just trying to coordinate our thinking around where we go to next to bring our people along on this journey. And one of the things that I'll say about those 5 regional TA sessions is that people got to hear from other folks who were struggling with some of the same things that they were, or had successes in some of the same things. And as a participant in those, I saw our local school district folks being able to learn from each other and collaborate and share resources in real time. And that was really powerful. So what were our big wins? Here they are. And it doesn't seem like a lot when I write it down on paper, but the bottom line is it was a whole heck of a lot of work. And I'm really proud of where we are today in terms of the dashboards we've created for folks to understand what the data means and how they can compare and contrast and learn from what other school districts are doing. And then of course, compare their own school district data to the state of Wisconsin. And then the regional collaboratives and the career pathways that meet size, scope, and quality. Where we missed some opportunities. This idea about our data and how we define it and what it means, and then educating our student information system vendors, all of the software companies that house report cards and all of the student data in those warehouses. We needed to do more intentional outreach and training of all parties in order to make sure that we had clean data coming in. And so we're still working on that, but it's a constant, it's just a constant part of our everyday work. And then more technical assistance about how to conduct a root cause analysis. There are people, assessment coordinators and folks who work all around in our schools and our regional education agencies that have been doing root cause analysis work for a really long time. what we learned is that career and technical education coordinators and teachers, that's not part of their pre-service programming. And for those folks who are career changers and coming into the profession outside of traditional routes, they don't get any of that. So it became very clear to us that we had to really open up that data book for folks and help them understand what it meant to peel back the layers of their programs, who was accessing them, who wasn't, and why, and asking that, you know, the toddler question, why all of the time. So our next steps are to do these couple of things. We have to focus on the accurate data. We have to make sure that our local education agencies have access to data. That's just a huge barrier for us right now. Understanding the data and that continuous improvement process through the root cause analysis. Those are our big next steps, and we're primed and ready to do that work. Our data migration is over and we're on to the next. And so I appreciate your time today. I look forward to talking with you more and hearing and learning from you, but these are some of the resources that I've shared with you in this slide deck that are direct links, and also in the resources folder that Mimi shared with you. So appreciate it. Thank you. Mimi, I think you're still muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. Well done. And John, both of you, some really good points. What we're going to do next is break out into a couple of breakout rooms with Sarah and John, give you an opportunity to ask questions of the two of them in a nice interactive way, and to engage in a little bit of an activity around looking at what are the things that you have been experiencing in relationship to the work that you're doing with the comprehensive local needs assessment. And I want to make sure you all can see this. Can you see my roses and thorns Jamboard? Yep. All right, good. So I created a Jamboard for you all to work in. As a matter of fact, now would be a good time for me to put it in the chat, so that you all can access it. All right, I just put it in the chat. Why don't you all, matter of fact, I just let somebody in. I'll load it again. So click on that link, make sure you can get in. And this first page of the Jamboard is just sort of an illustration of the thinking around this exercise. So there's going to be three pages in the Jamboard. If I recall, John, you're starting at what, roses or thorns? Remember?
Roses.
John's the roses guy, and Sarah's going to start in the thorn page. And we've created a bud page so that as you're all thinking about, oh, that's a really interesting idea, I hadn't thought about that, or you have a new idea that you want to share, or you're looking for more information or, you know, clarity about something, that page is set up specifically for you to jump to and stick a Post-it note in there. I'm assuming everybody's used Jamboards before, but just in case you move back and forth in a Jamboard through these frames at the top of the, somebody's moving around the image. So we'll have to be careful about that because the pages are all editable. Let's see if I can get it back in place. All right. On page 2, that's John, this is your roses page. And again, if you want to put a sticky note on there, you can just hit the sticky note button on the left, click the sticky note and save it. That's my sticky note. And if you want to delete it or edit it, you can do it just like that. Hopefully that's enough instruction for everybody. It's pretty intuitive. And then we have a roses page, which is really about what are the challenges that you faced. And then the bud page, new ideas, things you're looking for more information about. All right, Gregory, if you want to go ahead and hit the breakout room button, we can all move to breakout sessions. So just click on your name and it'll take you to your breakout room. John, I'm going to move you to room 1.
Thanks.
I just moved you to room 1. Sorry about that.
It's good.
I just noticed the 2 of you are in the same room.
Amy, just give me a heads up when you want me to close the rooms.
Okay.
Are you setting a
Yeah.
timer? Are you setting a timer or?
I'm going to pause the recording.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Sorry, hang on a second. All right, welcome back from the breakout sessions. Good to see all of you. I did get an opportunity to jump into the 2 rooms, and clearly there was some good conversation going on. So what I'd like to ask is maybe if the 2 groups can report out a little bit about the conversations they had, and I'll rely on John and Sarah to either do that, or if they've share that responsibility with someone from their group, that's great. And then we can do some more cross collaboration and Q&A. So John, we'll start with your group.
Yeah, Eileen very graciously volunteered to share out, and we are all going to back her up as needed. Thank you, Eileen.
Great.
Okay, very good. So you want me to start with roses?
Sure.
Okay, what we felt was a rose made districts take a look at their equity gaps and placed ownership on them to put in place attainable goals. Cross-stakeholder communication that led to new collaboration was another one. CTE teachers who participated felt the process validated their work. I think North Carolina noticed that CTE directors use CTE support staff at the local and school levels to provide input into the CLNA process. Forced to speak data institutional research to data institutional research departments. And it acted as a catalyst for conversation and data quality improvement. Boots on the ground staff forced to look at the data and consider it. Working with NAEP generates momentum. 2 more here. We brought to light needs for special education students, help to establish priority and generate conversations where there are roadblocks. And then finally, due to shared virtual abilities via COVID, a college can include a larger pool when traveling a distance or to remove as a barrier. Not sure about the last one. I don't know that I articulated that properly. Due to shared virtual abilities via COVID, a college can include a larger pool when travel is removed as a barrier. Okay, that was a rose.
So increased stakeholder engagement maybe, and I mean, we're finding that to be true in our professional development work, that we're able to engage with a larger audience, more people, because of the elimination of the travel issue. I mean, even here today, we wouldn't all be joining each other sitting in Timbuktu, Nebraska. It'd be hard for us to all do that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments from that group? Kind of overarching themes that popped out of your work that you want to mention? The discussions you had? Any ahas?
I don't want to overly speak for Elizabeth, but she said something that I think really resonated with all of us, which is like collectively we feel this pressure to do this, to do it well, to do it right, to go big, and it puts us in a tough spot, and we just need to give ourselves the grace, right, to pause and really explore, like, do I have capacity? Do I have the partnerships, right? Like, what's valuable, right, in terms of the next step in the long term, and just not feel pressure that we don't need to feel, because we're going to get it figured out. Did I do that well, Elizabeth? Did that capture kind of, you said it much better than I did. I appreciated her.
Thank you. Thank you, John. That's really true. I think, this is a new thing. This just appeared on the radar in 2018. Not to say that, we've all been doing some of this kind of work in the past, but to have it be so formalized and associated with funding and attached to accountability and be required and have this compliance piece to it, it feels so onerous. At the same time, you know, our experience when we've implemented the program improvement process is it's a journey, right? And it's an iterative process, and every time you do it, you'll learn something new, you'll get better at it. You'll, you know, think, oh, you know, why didn't I involve so-and-so? It's like John's comment earlier about, oops, missed the student voice thing. So you circle back and you fix it, right? Give yourselves some grace around that. You know, what I think is incredibly exciting is the fact that you're all doing it. I think that it's just really, in my career, to be at this point in my career, to see everybody talking about equity, it's just so exciting. I'm so excited. Anyway, sorry. Sarah, you want to share a little bit about your group?
If they would allow me to, we jumped right into the thick of it. And so I didn't ask anybody to report, but I know that there's willing folks who came up with some challenges. So please feel free to jump in here. As you can see on the thorn side of things, data literacy was sort of the through line of our conversation. Yes, there's enthusiasm for this, but that data literacy piece coupled with a couple of other things peppered in. I won't mention the pandemic, which we're still sort of in, but that did come up, as well as staff turnover. I don't care if you're at the secondary level, post-secondary level, this great resignation has caused some hiccups in how we go about doing our business. And it's not lost on any of us here. I understand that. And you know, this idea that we're trying something, we're throwing it out there, seeing if it sticks, if it doesn't, pivoting, and that's a feat in and of itself for state education agencies. There's no doubt about it. So yes, and then finally, the getting input from stakeholders. You know, in some of our experiences, we've been trying to do that and rolling it up at the state or regional level. And also we've asked our local school districts and, you know, colleges to do the same thing. And when you're asking a middle manager in an organization to get people above them to care about the thing that you care about, and the people below them and around them who maybe don't have any expertise in or interest in career and technical education, that's a difficult thing to do. And so all of these things together were sort of the couple of thorns that we identified. So data literacy and how to show the data, and that information literacy, and those assessment coordinators and people who do the inputting of the data, they don't know exactly what the data is, and they don't totally understand the definition of it. And then we're trying to teach the people, the subject matter experts, about what do all of these terms mean, and how do we define them in order to have clean data. So yep. And then the storytelling just came in, and I love that. So I am a huge fan of giving all of us grace. So I think you know, Elizabeth, if it was you who kind of started that, and John articulated it, we just have to be transparent about what we're trying to do, and then allow for feedback loops to happen so that we can alter and pivot and readjust throughout the process. So anyone else in the Thorn group, bring your voice into the room. We'd love to hear you.
We did go into some thorns, if you'd like me to articulate those.
Eileen, actually, was
Just
Sarah, was
yeah.
Joe in your group?
He was, and
yeah,
I would love to
Joe, you
hear
had
him.
just unmuted the same time as Eileen spoke. So then we'll come back to you, Eileen.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, no, please let Eileen go first.
I'm not going to let the two of you fight over this. So Eileen, go ahead, and then we'll get Joe on board here. No problem.
Okay. So the thorns that we identified, resources around special education accommodations for industry certifications. Felt pressure to develop strategies, may have overshot, miscalculated, or overcommitted. Need to establish responsibilities and roles to ensure capacity. Getting input from all the stakeholders. The pandemic has made data collection findings a bit more skewed because the way we do school is different. Districts needed data literacy improvement. We totally agree with you on that. How to use the process data for shared storytelling, information literacy as well. Again, the turnover of staff and keeping folks up to date with requirements, educating and re-educating those individuals. It was challenging to present data in an efficient and engaging way to the stakeholders in order to have robust, productive discussions. Lack of staff and capacity to implement, and then finally, lots of flying by the seat of our pants because no one knew in the beginning how to do this, and it's hard for new people that are new to Perkins to pick up what the CLNA process is and how it should go. And then we talked about the variances across the states in dealing with this. So those were our thorns.
Good job. Joe?
I didn't really have a approach to categorize it the same way that Eileen did. I just kind of wanted to piggyback and summarize what Sarah shared with us before we went out to breakout rooms, and then some of the things that she said during the breakout, or things that she coordinated in terms of our discussion. And that is that it's in DC, it's been very difficult, but I think that we have broken through in terms of getting teachers here and administrators and our counselors to learn how to embrace data, because they are understanding how important it is with regards to taking a 30,000-foot look at things. And I say that because I mentioned to Sarah in the breakout group that today was the second of 4 professional development trainings that I hosted for our CT teachers and administrators in data equity. And so today we rolled out Tableau, which is it's a public dashboard, but we had an outside consultant who handles our data to customize it specific to DC, and to have our teachers and administrators kind of like look at this and kind of play around with it, using drop-down menus and looking at all the sub-aggregate categories and what have you, was almost like seeing a 6-year-old on Christmas Day, because every time that they looked at the data and looked at it for the first time in such a way that they saw inequities, they said, oh, well, how about this? And it was really, really interesting. And so I'm saying all this to you all because I wanted to piggyback on some of the things that Sarah was saying, that, even though Wisconsin's trying to, transfer all this data and trying to figure out what it means and how to, translate it into a decent series of CLNA reports, once it's done and once, the teachers understand, or whoever is writing these reports, these narratives, understand how important it is, it's just going to be a brand new world.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, the pivot point in all this work is the data, and that is such an important component. And of course, that the step after that is really understanding the barriers. What I love is the fact that we're all talking about that. Nobody's talking about strategies. I mean, we know how to get to there. The point is which strategy is the right strategy. And the only way to know that is by understanding, one, what's the gap that you want to close, or what the opportunity that's missing, and why. Why? Sarah, you mentioned that the 5 whys theory. And then once you know that, then it's clear what you got to do. So I think that's fantastic. Anybody else want to add anything before we do a quick wrap up here.
Maybe if I could, just a
Yeah,
quick
Lisa.
observation.
Uh-huh.
So this is really exciting to hear, and Sarah mentioned the work that the regions are doing and how the collaboration that she saw within, in the sharing and the, we're all in this together and sharing resources, but also really jumping in and helping one another. And hearing that and kind of that there are common successes and common struggles and challenges. And so to kind of layer that with what's happening at the state level, I think it's really interesting to hear the similarities so that we can all that are at the state level can be aware that this is the same feelings, only maybe in a little slightly different way. It's what's happening in your local, education agencies also. So just kind of an observation there, and also just a big thank you to Nate for bringing everyone together, because I just think this is so valuable. And even just watching the resource sharing here and, in our group, and someone's like, oh, and I'll help you with this or that, it's just, it's really super valuable. So thank you.
That's what
This
we're
is
here
Cleo
for.
from Kansas, and I was just going to say, I was encouraged when I heard somebody say that they felt like they flew by the seat of their pants in the breakout, because that's kind of how we felt in Kansas when we did I was a co-chair for the first needs assessment, and we just finished the second needs assessment that was due February 1. And I can tell you it went much smoother than the first one, but I also can tell you that it's been kind of insightful, because so many educators want to make every program Perkins eligible, and oh, well, don't take my cheese from me that I'm used to having this stuff. And also don't make me accountable for, results with the funds. I just want to keep doing what I've always been doing.
Yeah, that's hard because this process really forces people to look at that and look at it very, very critically. Thanks, Celia, for bringing that up. Appreciate that. Anything else anybody wants to add?
I just want to say, I think
Mimi?
you're all going to do it, and you're going to do it very well. And the reason I know, there was not a single victim in any of the conversation we had. Like literally everybody said, this is what I'm experiencing. And right, like think about how many calls we're on where people are like, well, I can't do it because. Not a
Right.
single utterance of that, right? So I think as much as we're all feeling the pressure and overwhelmed and the responsibility and all of those things, we're all also going to get this done, and we're going to get it done well, and we're going to have like a really substantial impact. And it's because you're approaching it right from the right place and with the right mentality. Like I give you all a lot of credit because it's easier to come in the other way, and you're all coming in the right way.
Jeanette.
I was just going to say that I appreciated hearing that term digital literacy, because you can have a certain population of students highly represented in a CTE program. That could either be you're doing some awesome recruiting or there's some funneling going on. So I think that understanding what those numbers mean, and it's almost like a never-ending cycle of just digging down and drilling down a little bit more, until you get to that root cause or that great strategy.
Really good point. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to continue these kinds of conversations. So let me just quickly share my screen here. And I've been posting all along a link to our Google Drive that has all of the handouts in it for today's session. So there are lots of fantastic resources there, including the link to the Jamboard. And I want to say that we're going to leave the Jamboard up. So as time goes on, if you think of a rose or a thorn or a bud that you want to add to our Jamboard from today's discussion, please include it there. We'll make this a dynamic resource for you. And check out the great stuff that John and Sarah brought to the table. And we also NAEP included a folder in the Google Drive that has a variety of documents, information about how to do an equity gap analysis, a piece on equity principles in the CLNA, and a few resources on root causes. So check that all out and take a look. Again, the link is in the chat. And when you get the PowerPoint, we'll make sure that this link is hot so you can get to it that way. A quick reminder of upcoming activities. March 17th, we'll be doing a pre-release of our big root causes and strategies 2.0 with just our members only on March 17th. The authors of that document, Carol Burbank and Ricardo Romanillos, will be doing that session facilitated by Sylvia. Excuse me. Sorry, I breathed the wrong direction. Sylvia Ramos from our staff. March 18th, we have an affinity group. So if any of you that are here today are affiliate members, please join us at that session. And again, these are all member only activities. The NAEP National Board meeting will be on May 18th. And June 16th will be our next member meeting, which will be focused on corporate partnerships. You can find all the information and registration links to these at the member services page on the NAEP website. The link to that's down at the bottom. And if you just go to naepequity.org to the member services menu item, you'll find it there. And lastly, but not least, I want to remind you all that the National Summit is coming up April 25th to the 28th. It's a virtual again this year. We have two fabulous keynote speakers. Our opening keynote is Dr. Sean Harper, and our closing keynote is Dr. Suman Pendekar. We have I think there are 45 workshop sessions that you have an opportunity to participate in over the 3 days. Pre-conference sessions on Monday, the 25th. There'll be 8 workshops and the Leadership Institute. So lots to choose from there as well. And if you register 5 people from your agency or institution, you'll, 4 of them, excuse me, you get, if you register 4, the 5th one is free or 20% off. All registrations if they come in as groups over 5 people. So bring a group of folks to the conference and share with us. There'll be lots of networking activities. All right, I want to thank everybody for being with us today. And if anyone has any last minute thoughts or questions, please share them now. Otherwise, go and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
John and Sarah, thank you also for your
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Mimi. Take
great
care, everyone.
contribution.
Mimi, this
Really
is
appreciate it.
Kayla, and I just had a question for you.
Yeah,
Can you share with me your contact information so maybe we can have a one-on-one call?
yeah.
Because maybe you guys have some access resources for accommodations and that kind of thing with certifications for special pops. I would love to get my hands on that and try to help Kansas with that.
Yeah, actually, you know, we have a program called called Pipeline to Career Success for students with disabilities. And we've been doing this work in Delaware for quite a few years. And one of the sites there did a really great research piece on identifying all of the industry certifications and the accommodations that they allow. So I'd be happy to share that document with you.
Could you share that with me? Because that would be very helpful, because maybe some of those, the ones that are national certifications would be applicable then in Kansas.
Yes, so I'm going to put in the chat, there's my email address in the chat.
Okay.
And Clea, why don't you send me an email just so that I can just reply, and I'll attach that document for you.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then we can schedule some time to chat. And my colleague, Gregory Jackson, is on the call here too. He's our Associate Director for Membership and Partnerships. I'll invite him to that meeting, and the 3 of us can kibitz and see what we can come up with.
Okay, Mimi. I want to make sure I got this. Lucan at NAEP.